welcome to the Answer Podcast. My name is Paweł Burza and I am joined by Paweł Mielniczuk, the art director for Project Radar. Paweł, who do we have today?
Hi, today our topic will be about quality assurance, and our guests will be Monika, Rokita, narrative QA lead, and Piotr, Tyszko, associate QA director.
It's going to be a credible episode and I can't wait to meet our guests. So let's meet them. So Monika, Piotr, welcome to the podcast officially. QA, one of my favorite topics. I'm surprised we haven't done this earlier, to be honest, because it's a foundation, I would say.
Man.
I know, we'll just blame it on Kalemba. It's a foundation, but before we get into all that, could you guys just introduce yourselves for the people listening so they can hear your voice and associate it with the person and the job position that you have here at Red?
Sure. So I'll go first. I'm Monika Rokita. I am a narrative QA lead, working in Red since 2013 with a short maternity break leave. And always in QA, started in narration, still in QA, still in narration after all those years, because I like it, obviously. And that's it, I guess.
Amazing.
All right, I'm Piotr Tyszko, Associate QA Director. It's now over 7 years in CD PROJEKT. In general, however, it was over 5 years in GOG and almost 2 in Red today.
Perfect. I'm happy that he said project, not project.
Yeah.
Because
I tried my best.
That's how you say it properly. Perfect.
Project.
So guys, let's start from the basics. I think when people listening or watching this, they think QA, for sure, these are the people who just sit down, play the game all day. I could do that, right? Anyone can do that because it's easy. But I feel like it's a big misconception. So what are your takes as people who actually work in QA? How does your day-to-day work? And is it just sitting down and playing the game over and over?
Yeah, so I think I can take this one because this is kind of my day-to-day. Yes, that's true. This is the most common misconceptions about the QA. That's true. And yes, we play the game, but not in the context that you will think of it. Like, we do it not only for fun, we do it for fun as well because we have to make sure that the game is fun, but we also analyze it a lot. And there are many, many aspects of playing this game. The analysis is based on many things that we need to check. And there are like subjective and objective stuff. So we do play the game, but it's not the only thing that we do. And we are not the only ones doing that. Basically, everyone in the company should play the game at least once.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that it very often looks like we're playing the game, just as you said, right? But a lot of things happen behind the scenes that you don't see. It's like, I sometimes use this metaphor that this is like, solving the puzzles under the microscope. And it can look like we stare at the same door for 40 minutes, but actually it values, right? This is QA also.
Yeah. So it's more than just looking at a door, but
sometimes
there's
it's
more
looking,
depth into
right?
it.
But there are like little pieces you don't see yourself, but they're important, right?
You're looking at the door like from a different angle and with a different context in mind. But this is the same door all the time.
Yeah.
I think the other misconception could be that QA is the last step, right? So we make the game and then we send it to you guys and you test it and it's done, right?
It's totally the opposite.
It's totally not.
I think that the approach we are now having and like we're looking forward to have in the future is to be early in the development, right? So this is this terminology from software QA, shift left, where basically we try to be as early as possible. So, it's always easier to move a chair or this door I mentioned on paper than later once the house is built around the chair. You know what I mean, right? Yep. So it's better to be earlier to prevent from like costly and big bugs and problems in the future, right?
Domino effect. I remember from Phantom Liberty, because previously I was mostly engaged in the characters, and since Phantom Liberty I was also working in environments, and I did not realize, for example, how many elements connect to the environment. So the scenes, placement, dialogues, unique points, all the stuff are...
Many systems are overlapping, many features are overlapping, and we are the people...
And having the good QA there with the team from the very beginning, with the content team, with level designer, with environment artists, with scene designer, just taking, a hold on top of all these moving elements was incredibly important.
But we are even earlier in the process, not only when the game is already implemented, the puzzles are being done, We are even in the design phase sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
Because we also have our other side. We are the guardians of the quality. QA means quality assurance. So we have to guard the quality and support it in many different ways, not only when the game is done, but also when there is an idea of the game and an idea of the feature of the system and everything needs to be working together. We are there to be the voice of ideas, of risks, of many other elements that we see already at this point. So we are there like from the beginning, basically, till the end.
It's like sometimes people associate QA with just finding bugs, right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
So like it's not this only this. This is really important, of course, but beyond bugs are visible, but beyond bugs, there is like, I think that the main goal of QA is to protect and prevent from like a bad player experience. So we protect player experience and we try to spot, identify, and reduce possible risks. Sometimes we need to jump to the fire. Sometimes it's better scenario to go where the fire will be in the future. It's always cheaper,
anticipating where the fire will actually happen.
Than fighting the fire, right? So that's what we do. And what Monika said about QA, like making sure that like there is a quality in the game. That's our role. I try to explain it to the people in QA and also outside QA in our company that QA is the one accountable for quality, but QA cannot be the only one responsible for quality. It's like a common effort. It's a teamwork, right? So there are producers, designers, artists, engineers, all the development teams and folks who collectively work on the quality. But we drive that like quality aspect, right? We make sure they see the risky areas. They like we identify the problems. We try to address them as early as possible. That's our job, right? And one more thing. Sorry, I'm talking too much, but like,
it's perfect.
One more thing about QA that I really like to show to the people. Like there are two sides of this coin, right? There is objective QA, I would say. It's more about functional testing and making sure that the product works. But there is also subjective QA, which is more about the experience. How does it feel to play the game? Does it match the general game direction and vision that we decided we want to have in this particular game, right? And it's important to blend both of them. It's like once we have the car, we make sure that the car have brakes, right? But then we need to check if it feels not like it doesn't feel like a shopping cart going downhill,
Yeah.
It has to be like a smooth drive, right?
There are some cars that are that way.
I know.
Some beaters.
But it also has to have a pretty color to make sure that the people looking at it also, there are many emotions connected to that. There are things like checking pacing of the game, checking motivations of the characters, many things that are like 0-1 things, not technical wise, like not only about working, but also about being fun, again, the fun thing. But this is important also.
I think what helps, because how I think about QA is there's two things that support this. Like, first of all, they're the most experienced players overall, gamers. They are working libraries of all the games.
We have to play the games. We have to compare the stuff. We have to know what is going on at the market, what people want, what the player wants. So
I would say also the best players, right?
The best
players, right? Gameplay wise, So
that's all this, this experience. They can share this experience from different games, our games, external games, and tell the developers who not always are, as experienced gamers what to do. But the second thing is like those are people in the company who know the most about the game from all the layers, from engine design, to the final experience, true narrative. Because a lot of people in departments, they're very specialized and they're just locked inside their own, unlike the word silos, of course, but they are very focused on their own part of the work. And QA is something like, there's the glue that's
we are the collective.
So just wanted to say that I fully align with what you said, and. We are the first audience and very often the first critics of the game, right? And to be this critics in like a, meaningful and healthy way, we need to be experienced, what you said with the games, right? So for example, if we want to have some touch of, I don't know, Souls-like in the game, we need to know those Souls-likes. We need to play them. Someone has to be really experienced in that, right? Because we are not trustworthy partner if we don't, right? If we want to have an opinion, this has to be based on our experience. So yeah, QA has to play a lot of games.
Yes. What about specializing? Because we kind of touched upon it. So if you could tell us more or less, like if you look at QA as a whole, you said you're mainly narrative, but there's different parts of QA that focuses on specific parts of the game. So what's the division pretty much?
It's complex. Maybe you can start with your perspective.
It is complex, but let me like paint a picture.
Yeah.
On the project that I work on, because every project can be different, right? QA is adjusting to the project and to the needs and to the areas that are created on the project. So for our projects in Red, we have those 4 or 5 main areas. It's narration, it's gameplay, it's tech, and it's art, and open world as a fifth one. And QA are adjusting to those areas and are more focused on what those areas are creating, implementing. So we have this deeper knowledge about stuff. Because what's important, we work as an analysts, and analysts need to know the tools. They need to know the systems, the process. We need to know everything that the designers know, sometimes even more. And we have to have like this broader picture on everything, this holistic view on everything, because the system also are overlapping with each other. And, we are just specializing in something. We are better in something, but it doesn't mean that we are only in this thing. That if I'm in narration and I work mainly with quests and cinematics and story, the things that are building the narration most, that doesn't mean that I don't work with level design or localization, because those are also ingredients. There's a metaphor that I like to use. This is the point that I use my soup metaphor, because I think QA is like a tasting critics, like a restaurant critic. We are tasting the dish that somebody else prepared, and we are checking if the ingredients work with each other. If there is enough salt from level design, enough sweet from story side, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And being specialized help us to do it better, basically. But it also doesn't mean that we only have the view. We have to have the broader view.
Yeah,
we
it
can't
cannot
really
be tunnel vision on one thing.
We have to be careful with this, because we don't want also to be a silo, in our disciplines or areas. And especially when now we are developing multiple projects, I really encourage ourselves to be more flexible and adaptive to different scenarios. So this differentiation that Monika said is in place, but we need to remember to be adaptive, right? One more thing that I want to say, which is really important, this division, this is how we, for example, form our team in Polaris and in Witcher 4 game. But we can't forget about the rest of the QA, which is also disciplines like localization QA, audio QA, QA engineering, which is part of tech QA, but also recently formed a really important team, publishing QA, who's supporting our external projects, where we have different type of work, because we are not like a dev QA team embedded to the content teams in-house project, but we kind of verify the work of the developers, external developers who work on the projects for us, right? Because we became a publisher as a company, as you know, right?
Totally.
So there is a big spectrum.
Making sure that the external projects are matching our own quality and
exactly. So once we decided, okay, let's publish the games that are developed by someone else, but let's make sure this meets the same level of player experience we used our players, right? So we don't screw it, right? This is super important. And actually, so far it's so good, but we'll see in the future, right?
So, and does the QA adapt to the phases of the projects? How does the structure of the team change over the production?
Good question.
It does and it doesn't. This is a complicated question, because again, I'm speaking only from my perspective on the project, on the bigger one, our inside project. Those areas are stable. They are there, and we need to work with those areas. But the needs change, the needs from these areas change. And obviously there are different phases of the project and different needs during those phases. As you know, at the beginning are the design. So there is a lower need of the QA, but if you go further into the game, there are things like compliance that stepped in. So, more things are being
QA,
checked.
Important thing.
Yeah.
What is it?
So compliance QA is a QA that verifies and checks if the game and the feature in the game are in line with certification requirements for each platform. So for example, you need to publish, you're about to publish the game, launch the game on PlayStation 5, Xbox, or Nintendo, right? And each of these platforms has different requirements. We need to meet all of them. Yes, I'm really proud of our compliance QA team. It's part of our publishing QA. We have one-man army now, but supported by external partners who support us in testing. So far, every certification we had since like 2024 was successful, right? So in first attempt, which is like a big success in my opinion. And this is important to have someone in the studio in QA who is aware of where we need and how we need to get prepared for the certification.
Yes, it's not like the last thing we do, but during the development we prepare ourselves.
Yeah, that's the last thing we do, but in early development, like in pre-production, you need to sync with the engineers about how the game will be built to meet these requirements at the very late stage of the project, right?
We can act earlier than like just waiting for this moment.
Yeah,
this is the certification moment.
So, but you need to start thinking early. I think this is the essence of QA. You need to identify some important issues early because later on in the late stage of the project, like, I don't know, advanced production, it could be too late, right? Or too costly.
I think this could be one of the mistakes that the new studios are doing. For example, they're thinking about QA, introducing QA is too late in the process, right? Thinking this like it's the last step. No.
When the game is done, basically see it and test it.
I think it used to be like that for like years in the industry. It's changing now.
It is.
It changed a long time ago, probably in US. It's changing also in Europe. And I'm glad this is happening because we see the benefits of this.
Yeah, it needs to be an iterative process, like with anything that is within game dev. Like it needs to happen at the early stages of the game, and then just going through different iterations, testing and playing, and kind of finding out what's the next thing that should be done.
I think that just one more thing. It's like with QA, like sometimes you don't see. It's like with producers, you don't see sometimes the value of production or QA unless you don't have it, right?
Yes.
Unless you miss it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
They're like, we're screwed pretty much. You also mentioned that you use external QA partners. So how often do we actually reach out to external partners with help, and how does the collaboration work?
Quite often, very often, I would say.
I would say all the time. All the projects that we did.
Most of the projects, maybe not all of the projects. We have like, at the moment we're a multi-project studio, so we work on very small projects sometimes. And then it's okay to have just a couple of our analysts inside. But with majority of our projects, we use external partners who are responsible for functional tests mainly, sometimes compliance tests. These are testers. This is the difference. They are testers. We are analysts inside our studio. And, within the complexity of the project and the later stages, we need to scale up our testing, and then we have more testers, right? So we use testers. We're really glad that we have them. So thank you, our partners, that we have you on board.
Because both roles are important. Like there are different roles. Analysts analyze more, testers play more. Like Piotr said, functional tests. But both roles are important, and obviously working with each other, of course. Yeah.
I think that very often external testers are the main source of knowledge about the state of the game and its functionality. Sometimes they're the supplement. Sometimes we really trust the value we take and the data we have thanks to their work, and we try to use it to make the best decisions about potential risks or about how we develop the game in general, right?
All right. So let's now maybe dive deeper into what the actual work looks like. So Monika, can you tell us more about this narrative QA? That's interesting for me because, it's like, I think people might have different imagination. What does it actually mean to be a narrative QA?
What does it mean? This is a philosophical question.
It means a lot.
Okay. I already mentioned that the narration works with specific teams. The core of our job is working with the teams that creates narration. So basically quests, story, writers, and cinematics. But we work with everybody. Like the teams are. Piotr mentioned being embedded. We didn't explain that, but this is important actually in this situation because the specialization also means for us in Red that we are embedded. That means we are working close with those groups, with those teams, with those developers. And when I mean close, I mean very close. Like we are on the meetings, on the plannings, on the all other things that are like being decided. We are there.
Super important.
Maybe we are not the decisive people. We are more of supporters group, but we are still there, and we can still have the voice about it. So in narration, we obviously work on quests. So we play the game. Our most important aspect is playability of the game. So you can start it and finish it, and you can move through the quests and, pick your own choices and finish it. And there is no blocker on the way. So this is the most important aspects for narration. And there are many, many things going into this playability things. And again, the soup thing. So many ingredients coming into the soup, and we are testing it and feeling if the story works well, if the motivation of the characters works well, if there is a continuity, if we are doing like a multiple titles one by one.
And also between quests, right? Because
yes,
each quest has different quest designers, and sometimes maybe they can get lost in their own work and not forgetting about interconnecting everything together.
We need to take this holistic view of the game and know if the quests we are comparing a lot of stuff. The pacing thing that I mentioned is checked along the full game. Like each scene can have their own pacing, but also each quest can have this. But also the whole game has their own pacing. So we have this whole level thing of checking this playability stuff from the beginning, from the smaller parts till the end. And what's important is that in our work, we also touch a lot of topics from other teams. Because again, soup thing, everybody's implementing everything into this one big jar with the soup. So we are the last people looking at it. So not only the narration thing, but also if other features, like gameplay features, worked well with this narration.
So you are like a cook tasting the final product, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
each ingredient could taste delicious, but together, not always, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Need to work together.
I think that's really important thing about your side of QA. Your area is like narrative. Our games are narrative-driven games, right? So this is like super important for us to have this aspect and have focus on this. Not only this, but this is kind of a
needs to be perfect.
Yes, this is like anything, something that makes us unique, basically.
We like to do many paths and many choices. So QA needs to feel the consequences, like in the game.
Does the work start even before? You said before, like on the paper. So I know that quest designs, they usually start with this massive documents with a lot of, A, B option. If you do that, this happens. It's really hard to read. There's a lot of, I guess,
multiple branches thing.
Going through all of that, making sure these logical connections are working, etc.
This is our job, exactly. There is a thing called like path testing, the player path testing, and this is also the most important thing next to the playability for narration. So we make sure that all choices that the player take among the game, like all the variables that you can take, are finishing well, like are not blocked or not stupid, basically. So you do something and there is a consequence that doesn't fit your action. So we play the game, but we play it in a context with like 100 steps to check if every variable, if you take a car right now or just, fast travel to some place, if the scene's going to work. It sounds very monotonous. It kind of is, because you have so many steps that you have to follow, and there are so many possibilities of those paths that we cannot even cover all of those. There are even millions of those possibilities that the player can take. But we try to cover as much as we can. And and we do that for a longest time on the project. Like the game, if it's ready, we're checking if all the paths, all the possibilities and variations are correct, fun again, and working basically.
Well, that must be super difficult because we work on massive RPGs and the games are pretty huge. Like if you look at Witcher 3, 100 hours or more easily. So are there any like shortcuts or anything things that you can do in order to speed up some things. So kind of, I don't know, move faster, traverse faster, like you have a big open world to kind of traverse. Like, are there any tips and tricks that you can pretty much do in order to make the process a little bit faster?
Yes, but they're based more on what the engine can do for you. So we, in our studio, we prepare this stuff inside. So if there is a need to skip something, we have the engineers or the people creating this stuff for us. So there are many debugs, actually. This word didn't come up today. So debugs are the things that we are going deeper into the stuff. We are not only just, analyzing what it's on the shallow ground, just looking at the bug, this is not working, and that's it. We are going deeper and debugging why it's not working. So, there's a lot of things to cover. I was actually the person that was preparing the paths, for example, for Cyberpunk thing and for Phantom of Liberty. And actually, I was working on the paths for Witcher 3. So I'm a good person to ask about it. And there were many, many variables that we needed to check. And actually, my favorite thing that I like to mention from Witcher 3 is that when we wanted to check all the possibilities that the quest designers prepared, we didn't have that much time to check it, obviously, because there could be thousands of variations. And the QA, we as narrative QA, we wanted to check it in pairs, and one person played during the day and the other during the nights.
Okay.
So we had the night shifts. It isn't normal. We don't have the night shifts normally. It was only our idea to cover all the possibilities. And it was worth it, as we saw, for example, the Baron thing in Witcher 3, all the possibilities that you can, play this quest, thanks to Paweł Sasko. Hi, Paweł.
Paweł Sasko.
As you mentioned.
Yeah. So, we needed to check all those things, and those massive games, we like to do massive games. We like to give people the choices. We like to make people role play in our games. So we need to make sure that this is working for them.
Giving them the freedom, I think, is a big thing.
But it's also fun for us to play the game and check what the different
Just one more thing to add here. Of course, when our games, as you mentioned, are very massive, big games, so we are not able to play them all the time, to run the game from A to Z. So we do also the speed runs, right?
But because there are different type of paths that you can take.
Absolutely.
We are also doing that. There is a completionist path, the biggest one that you do when you do everything, or the Skellige question marks.
All the question marks. Gotta get that platinum. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I'm also a platinum gamer, so
nice.
I do the platinum things on the PlayStation. So so I love that. So we made those completionist paths to make sure that you do everything, but also there are speedrun paths to make sure that you can skip everything. There are also the failed paths on the way, because you can fail the quest. So again, many different possibilities that we need to think about, and many different tools to do that, because there's a lot of data to take into the account, to randomize it, to make sure that you didn't miss anything. And for that, one more thing, there is also a thing called golden path, because this is the most popular. It's supposed to be the most popular path for the players. When we want to show some stuff on the way, we are making sure that the biggest percentage of the player will play this path. So we are making sure that this is working. This is the priority.
This has to be perfect.
And all the other things are
It's usually the main quest, right?
Yes. The main path through the quest.
If it branches, what then? We have two golden paths.
We have more. If it branches, we have more paths, and it's our problem to check all of those.
Actually, this branching thing is so common for us in our games. We need to be prepared for that.
That's hard, right? I wonder. So how many times you finished the game?
Do you want a number? I don't remember.
I don't know.
Many times. We need to finish it many times, because you can finish
it. Hard to count it, I guess.
In a different ways. And the truth is, you are not always finishing it. So you can play the prologue for 100 times before you finish the game. Because
first, you need to have the game, right?
Yeah.
but here, I'm also wondering, because I know how hard it is for regular developers to just play a draft of the quest, for example. They're super rough. You have it's all gray. The characters are not talking or making some silly moves. There are no animations. It's not a pleasant experience. So how you need to have a lot of imagination just to imagine yourself what's the final product rather than just focusing on what doesn't work, because basically and nothing works at some point, right? And
Yeah,
I mean,
nothing
working,
works,
I mean,
we are
it doesn't look,
focused,
maybe it looks horrible, you know,
Yeah.
and just you have to a lot of imagination to imagine like, okay, like I'm focusing on this narrative structure and I'm paying attention to all those crazy things happening on the screen.
The truth is, when the game is in that state, where what you are describing, we are focusing on that state more, not on the final vision, because things may change during this time. So we have to focus on what it is there right now.
What's the
So
task right now?
if it's working if the fundamentals are working, so we can make it beautiful later and polish it later. So it's kind of, we cannot step into the future that much with our mind.
I just mean it's very difficult to just focus on this actual thing. You have to evaluate at that point.
But I think it's difficult for everybody on the project to imagine the full game, how it's going to be, with everything coming from every department, because you don't know that much thing at this point. Once there is a time in this process of creating a game called feature complete. It's called different. It can have different
Feature
names.
complete,
There's like
content complete.
exactly.
All these
but
name
after
periods.
this moment, this is the moment to like look at the full game. I mean, we should be talking about risk before, because after this moment there is hard to introduce any changes. But this is the moment when you see the full picture, like very, very full picture with the details and everything, with all the audio sounds, because the post-processing is coming up a bit later than the questing. We don't work like all the teams are working at the same time. Some teams need to prepare something for other teams. So it's,
and it's, I think, worth to mention that this is also the moment when the content is complete, where we shift a lot of our resources from like embedded work to, we call it like a global
more
QA,
general
game QA, right?
thing,
Where we play the game. We just play the game, whether these are analysts or testers, they play the game and just they find the findings, right?
This is the moment for the paths, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And this happens rather, first of all, we need to have the content complete, and it's rather the more advanced stage of the development, right? So like advanced production.
Yeah. Having such a big knowledge of the game, do you feel like it kind of changed your approach when playing games in your free time?
Unfortunately, yes.
I recently started to play the game just to, identify like, maybe not the bugs, but like how these games are like designed, what we can learn about them in our games. So this is kind of, I love it, because this is like, it's about, I feel don't guilty if I play these games, because I learn, and this is for my work, but also pleasure, right? Sometimes if it's like more pleasure, I stay the game and try to beat it. Sometimes I play just like 10 hours or 6 hours just to have the feeling about the game and see what we can like learn from this. Was the successes they provided the developers to us, or whether the failures we want to avoid in our games, right? So
so you have an analytical approach to it. You kind of see like what's happening, and
that's me. But I think that many people do the same.
That's
right?
true. We know what's under the hood at this moment, so we know how the game works. Not only like enjoying it, we are also enjoying it, but not only. So we are. I think, me personally, I appreciate more what the other creators are doing, but I know how it's working under the hood. So. Like, for example, when I see that somebody uses a camera in a creatively way in a game, and I know how it's made, I really appreciate that I know this, and I appreciate that the people are doing that.
You know how hard it is to make that.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you have more empathy to the developers, because you know how hard it is.
Yeah.
This is the miracle. I think that Seba said that in some previous episode, our game director of Witcher 4, that we make miracles, right? So and it's difficult to make them, right? Sometimes it doesn't like work well. So I have a lot of like empathy and appreciation to the developers.
I'm happy that you said that, because I was thinking it's going to be the other way around, that it's going to be like, oh no, it's very hard to enjoy games now because I know how everything works, and I know where they kind of cut corners. This could have been better. I know what they did here.
Yes, there is this side, but I didn't want to speak about that. But there is the side when you see that things could be done better if you know how they're done, and you see that There's an example that I like to take, like when there is a scene and you are a player at the scene and the scene ends and you see that you are spawned somewhere outside, like far, far away. I'm thinking, why can you be spawned at the same point?
Yeah.
Scene, like I'm
breaking immersion in that case.
Breaking immersion. That's beautiful words, but yes, this is the side. But yeah,
I think that there are things in games that I observe that when I play the game that irritates me. Because I know that this could be done better. We have our own perspective. We develop AAA narrative-driven games, so it's different than indie, right? And sometimes I'm irritating that the character I play jump in a weird way, but later on playing the game, I know that it doesn't really matter because the overall experience is great. So it doesn't matter the character jumps in a weird way, right?
Yeah.
So
these are this kind of like experiences like we have.
We have mixed feelings right now. Basically, it depends on the game and depends how the creators done it. But there is this something in your brain working differently when you know how it's done.
Yeah. So what's the most challenging thing you would say in terms of like testing RPG system, quest logic, or branching narratives? And also I want to touch somewhere on content lock and kind of getting all the submissions and things done and then pushing it out. And because that always is I feel like in the studio, we always talk about, content lock is coming up. We got to like put as many things. Yeah. And ship it.
And what happens when the content log happens, like day before or night before, all the submits come. So you in the morning you open the editor and you don't recognize the game.
Yes, actually, these are two different answers because what's the hardest things about testing those massive games, I think it's to cover everything because we're just people and we are also getting tired of stuff and we also work only 8 hours a day. And to cover everything that the players, that the thousands and millions of players can do, it's not possible. So we are trying to cover a percentage of it, like the most popular thing that I mentioned, the prioritized thing. And we would want to cover everything and make sure that there are no problems in the release product. It doesn't, like, we cannot do it. The other thing is the time. We would have to have a lot of time to make sure that the game is tested like very, very properly. And we are doing what we can in the time that we have. The other thing, the logs. This is kind of a different thing. The logs are part of the process. For people that don't know, there are moments in the process that you need to log the submissions to make sure that you control what's coming into the build, to control all the submits, to check all the submits.
It's like I love this metaphor. I know I'm using the metaphor again, but like
we like metaphors.
Like it's like when we build something in the early stage of the project, then later on, for example, we stop people who want to move the wall, and this wall is at the same time being painted by someone else, right? So this is this kind of a metaphor, right?
Putting a picture on it.
So that's why we do content lock,
can
right?
never be done.
So no walls moving because we paint them, right?
Yeah, we're stopping everything just to check where we are, how the game is, how the build is, and everything that is coming in needs to be checked by QA.
Triaged.
It's triaged and checked and controlled, and even before it's implemented into the game. So there are moments that nobody likes, to be honest, not the people that are stopped, and we are also like this is heavy burden on us because everybody's waiting for us to check something.
Becoming a bottleneck.
The bottleneck thing. Yeah, we are becoming. We tried not to because we don't want to. We don't want to stop anyone, and we have a counted number of days to do something. Yeah. So we have deadlines. Yeah. So we have to fit into deadlines. So we need to be smart about the logs, and there can be different rules about it, but it depends on the moment in the process, depends on what is the state of the game. The log can also be only on one team, not on everybody. it's different. So there are many details to the process, but basically it's about control and making sure that everything is stable and the game is stable, stabilized.
So basically, when this lock happens and a new change needs to be introduced, and someone is doing the change, could be a small one, but could be the whole system refactor.
You never know.
Then it's being sent to you, so nobody else in the studio actually can download it in the engine. You have to test: does it work? Does it fill the requirements? Does the whole game work?
Doesn't it break the whole game?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't break the editor, the game, the paths, etc. And once you validate it, it enters, everybody in the studio can download it, right?
Yeah. And at the end, we have all those submits, and the build should be still stable, but being prettier, let's say, and working better. And this is hard because, again, the bottleneck thing. So people are waiting for the submit. It takes time to check because
we're the bottleneck, and we stop the game, the development, but we do it for the good of the game. Right?
We have good intention. This is not to make anybody.
But we feel this pressure. We need to be lean and effective in what we do, so we don't stop the development because this costs.
I remember the famous boat from The Witcher 3. It was like you change something completely unrelated, one thing in a quest or something, and then the boat breaks.
This is the thing where you need the QA, because if the designer is working on one thing, he's testing only this thing in his own environment, and we are testing in the environment of the game, which is very important because it can affect anything, even if the things that you didn't think about it. So it happens, and that's why we're there.
So so we have bugs, right? So how they are communicated to the team? How usually is? What are the means of communicating all these problems and bugs to the development team?
I think there are like many ways of communicating and means of communication.
Yep.
There is like obviously very like ad hoc communication. We use our Slack channel, for example, our communicator. There are reports we prepare and send. There is Jira reporting.
Yeah,
right?
we use Jira for bug tracking, and we use many fields to let people know if this is high priority, we use severity. There are like assignees, teams, and stuff. So they should know. They should follow this as well.
Reporting is one thing, but this reports needs to catch the attention and explain swiftly what's the problem, right? If it takes 10 minutes to understand the bug, something's wrong. You need to improve your reporting, basically, right?
We have some best practices as it comes to the bugs to make, again, things effective. We're crazy about effectiveness.
But actually this communication is also a very difficult part because we need to be honest and direct, but at the same time, not to be assholes. Sometimes we look like assholes, but that's not our intention.
You're
Of course.
guardians of the quality.
Yeah, this is being radically candor. It's radical candor, right? So you were direct.
Just a small fix. Hey, come on. This wall, 1 centimeter in this wall. Remove it just a little bit.
Won't change anything.
It won't break anything.
We have to be very assertive in our work because we communicate. We work with many different people, teams, and characters. So different people communicate in a different way. So the assertiveness is very important because we want to relay the message about the data. We don't want to criticize anybody's work. We are doing that, unfortunately, because we are pointing mistakes in the work, but we don't want to be harsh. We are doing this with a good intention.
I think this is like, we try to be kind, but not nice, right? We say how it is, but we do it for the good of the developers. And what's the most important, the good of the game, right?
Brutally honest.
Yeah.
Always the way to go.
Yeah, be honest.
Yeah, I'm happy that you mentioned reporting. I remember that whenever when we are before like hitting a big release, we always get reports with the amounts of bugs that are happening, the stability, and it's always like, what's the number? What's the number? How close are we? Especially if you work on communication, you want to know before the release how close you are to a product which would seem that is like tested, looks perfect, and that you're ready to kind of work on the publishing side of it and the marketing side and the communication, the PR and all that jazz, that, you're seeing also how much work is actually put in by QA team. And you're seeing like the stats going down because we get graphs, we get everything. So it's like a fully blown, awesome presentation that is easy to digest. And you're like, there's really a lot of work going in. And it's also like, in the last days, in the last months, and, and you see the whole process, which is like super interesting from my point of view, for example. So
I love the data.
Yeah.
I love gathering data.
How many bugs there could be? in the project?
Many. It depends on the phase. Depends on if you're thinking about all the bugs or maybe bugs directed to one theme. But there can be thousands, really.
Could be thousands, but like what matters is
They should be closed, obviously, not open thousands.
what are the bugs that really matter? Of course, we try to avoid all the bugs, right? But we also prioritize and set the severity for the bugs. We try to avoid those, mainly those, and first of all, those that really impact the game in a wrong way. You can't avoid all of the bugs. No matter how you test the game, no matter what kind of tests you apply, game will always surprise you at the end, and the players will surprise you, right? But our aim is to minimize this surprise, right?
Yeah.
So where there's this pipeline, development pipeline, we try to make sure that the outcome of the pipeline is not a big surprise.
And what are those levels of severity of the bugs?
I think it depends how we agree on with production, right?
Depends what is needed at the most, but there are like 3 levels: the most high one, medium, and
And what's the P0 alert?
Priority zero. So if you don't know what P0 is, so it's like the highest. It's like red lights everywhere.
When you got a P0 bug, then
every hands on deck.
Yes.
So for example, the game doesn't work. The build is not like
starting
game breaking.
You can't really kick it off, right? So then, like, it's this what we try to achieve: always working game. So we try to have the game that is always working, right? The build that is always like able to start, right?
On all platforms.
If it's not happening, it's like a blocker. It's P0.
And you get an email.
Yes, we have special channels. We have
we have our own methods. Let's not talk about it because people are listening, and we have our I think good methods for that.
Okay, great.
And
so there's
it depends.
Game breaking. They're like important, for example, visual bugs or functionality breaking. Then there are like some cosmetics, probably, right?
That really depends also on the specialization of the team, because each team can have their own priorities inside.
And also the P0 thing changes over the development. So I guess it's different in the later stage of the project and in the very early stage of the project. Sometimes you don't pay attention to the things that are critical in later stage when you are in the beginning of the project, right?
I think it's kind of at the beginning, we don't report everything because there are not enough things to be reported. Like we report all the blocking bugs, the groundbreaking things. Then there is this gate open flow thing, report everything moment when we filter out everything. And then again, we're closing this filter to the most important things because the time is running out, unfortunately. But just to say this, there is a big chance that if you see a bug after the release, the bug in the game, it was seen and reported, but for some reasons, we didn't have the time or the chance to fix it. So we try to report everything, but we don't have enough fixers, for example. And that's why the patches after the release, we try to address that after. So we're trying to cover everything, but again, we're only just humans.
But like one more thing about the bugs, like of course P0s, P1s, and P2s probably, these are the things that we need to address immediately. But like there are good examples of games you can check in the world that they had bugs, but overall they were brilliant, right? Because the overall experience was great. So we can't really be too focused only on bugs and like go mad because of bugs. We need to balance this objective side and player experience feeling with the bugs. Sometimes it's okay to have little things. What matters is if the overall experience is good, it feels good, right?
Yeah. I'm happy that you also mentioned post-release, because there's always this thing that, like you mentioned, you can test things for so much time, and still when you give a game to 1 million players or more, they will eventually find something, right? So how do you manage this? Like, because sometimes players do some of the weirdest shit you could like ever imagine. You're like, I would never think that like you need to have a special weird weapon and something together and go, instead of going like the main path, go around from the back and do something.
The repro steps. The repro steps are very complex. And so how do we cover?
So reproducing actually what the player did.
Based on what? Like YouTube videos, for example, like Twitch streams, or just you're getting the information from the players?
Exactly. After the release, you're asking. So after the release, the main focus on the let's say, bugs and problems with the game is shifting to customer support. And customer support is like the group that is gathering all the info. So if you have any problems, reach out to customer support. They will reach out to us.
They are very active in like looking for this, because this is not only them like receiving the tickets from our players in our customer support portal, but they go to the forums, right? They read about the problems, or they
actively
check
the
social media portals, stuff like that. And if they report something, then they let us know, right?
Exactly. They have their own like a Jira and their own project, and they're reporting their own tickets from all the information that they could gather. And it's sent to us to try to reproduce, try to debug it, try to analyze it and find the conclusion. So this is for all the people that's sending those issues. The more information you get us, it's the easiest for us to find it. So, you know, if you have save files, crash files, anything you can think of, the repro steps before you did it, it's kind of a QA job to prepare a ticket like that. But the more you tell us what you did, there is a bigger chance that we will fix this issue. If we only have an info like this thing doesn't work, we are not sure why, what's the reason, we can try it. It's work for us. And there's the saying in Polish language, it's working for me, it's not working for you. So
like, what do you mean everything's fine? It works on my
PC, exactly.
Just restart your computer.
It's the same for the developers, actually, right? Some developers are also sometimes reporting bugs to you, right? Something
That's true.
It doesn't work for me, but also some
or they're reporting the bugs for themselves, but we are helping finding the solution and investigating.
Right. There's always this, you know, when your editor crashes, people tend to send just kill it and restart it, but it's better just to summarize what you did, so it crashed, so you have more information and you can make
we work
better
on data, and the bigger data that we get, the more data.
As Monika said, the more information, the more context we have, the better and easier for us to fix it or address the fix with the developers sooner, right?
Yeah,
like with doctors. I'm
Exactly.
in pain. No, like
the game is an organism.
Absolutely.
This is also a metaphor that I use. This is a living organism that each change, each environment, even if you are using like a different headphones that we use at work, it can break something, it can change something, and we don't know about it, and we can look for the solution, not seeing anything breaking for us because of this one small thing. So the more data, the better, and we can help.
And in this post-launch stage, I really appreciate the fact that the players come to us and tell about the problems. Of course, we want to avoid the situation. The less interaction with players sending us bugs, better. But at the same time, this is how we listen to them and how we improve the games for them, right? So I truly believe that our games are as good as they are because we listen to their feedback and we just incorporate changes based on that. Right?
We try,
and then we've always been open with players. I always like that because I remember I always tell this story before I joined CDPR. I was playing Witcher 3 at home, and I had one bug before patch like 1.08, something like that, and it was Lambert in Kaer Morhen would fall under the ground, and I could interact with him to progress the main quest. And instantly I was asked to send a log of what happened, and then I had a community manager reach out to me and say that, okay, this is going to be handled in the upcoming update. Told me when the update is going to happen. The update happened. The thing was fixed, and I got all this information. Well, sometimes I've always been in a position that I would have problems within games, and either it was very hard to talk to someone that is actually from the studio, ask me for all these things, and then have the reassurance that these things are going to be fixed. So I've always liked that we do that, and I also love that we never kind of say no, like, you know, in the sense that, okay, we know that, for example, the game has a lot of bugs, but we'll be going, improving and fixing things until we are satisfied with it and we see that players are satisfied with it. And kind of like, you know, the resilience of never stopping. And I think that's super cool. And that's mainly thanks to QA, right?
Does it happen that we cannot reproduce something? There's some super rare bug that's happening and nobody can find it?
Yeah. Mostly when we don't have the data, how it happened, and we cannot reproduce it. Usually when we have like a save file or something like that, it's easier. But if we don't know what happened, like what were the steps before, it may work for everybody. Or it's about the equipment, because sometimes the equipment, the hardware can also do something. So we just need to know about stuff, and we hopefully can reproduce it. But also there are situations that we cannot. But we try. We try to do it.
Must be easier for sure with consoles, because everybody's using the more or less same hardware, but also depends which patch are you on. Some people don't download specific patches, or they play like super vanilla versions.
And the mods are kind of pain in the ass for us, because
mods
the mods are breaking the natural original environment game. So, if you have mods and you have problems, we may not help you the way that you think we will. Yeah. So, yes.
Yeah, that's why whenever we do updates, we tell players to like, hey, if you have any mods, you better get rid of those and then reinstall them and then see if it works. But you need to kind of like once you update to a new version, those most likely won't work. And then the modders need to kind of update their mods to fit the new version of the game. So it's like, it's a whole process.
The game is a very delicate organism.
It also could happen that the drivers, for example, so the game is broken because of external software.
Even for us, we have to refresh our drivers from time to time when there are new ones. So
that's why we also always recommend to, make sure that you have like minimal requirements. Like,
the requirements are also important. If you're not playing on the at least minimal ones,
we can't guarantee.
Exactly, we can guarantee that we can help you. Again, we can try, but there is no guarantee. If you're not playing by our rules, there is no guarantee that we can help. Yeah.
How do you guys keep morale going? Because I feel like you're covering a wide aspect of everything. And like you said, the game is a living organism. It's huge. Before release, I know that everybody's like, stakes are high. Anticipation is incredible. Everybody just wants to get the game out the door. There's a lot of testing happening. There's a lot of bug fixing happening. How do you keep everybody going? Because I know that QA is one of the hardest working part of a gaming studio. And if someone tells me it's not true, I'll tell them it is true, because you can tell how many things are getting fixed super quickly. But how do you keep people going and kind of keep morale going in a team?
Yeah, I will start with this, that, you're right. It's sometimes this morale can drop faster than anywhere else, because we also see the negative side of the project, right? Of the game. We see these bugs, we see these problems, and there are sometimes many of them, which is natural. But if you every day see the problems, you start thinking like there are only problems,
you
right?
Focus on problems, yeah.
I think problem solvers, basically.
my approach in this is try to show people the bigger picture. We do it for the bigger thing, right? For the greater good, how we say it, right? For the good of the game. And sometimes the morale boosts when you achieve to fix something, right? A little thing. For example, the build doesn't kick off. It looks very bad, but you meet with the developers, you brainstorm, you go to the logs, and suddenly, it works. Let's celebrate. I don't say we always celebrate. We should celebrate more. But I see people really, the spark in their eyes. If they manage to fix or find a way to fix little thing, like if you look at like from very high perspective at this little thing, nothing, a peanut, right? But for some people, this is a lot, and we celebrate this. And this kind of things probably, in my opinion, boost the morale up. I don't know about
when we are problem solvers. When we solve the problem, this is a success for us.
Yeah.
So basically,
that's the dopamine hit. Yeah, we did it. Boom.
Yes. Because obviously, it's great to be enough patient and strong to wait till the release. But release is like sometimes years in work in trenches, right? You need to find
after the release is
it's huge.
Great.
It's huge. If everything is like as we expected, it's probably it's huge. Not probably, it's huge. But you need to find a way to find the satisfaction in the pipeline, like when the game is not ready to be launched, right?
From the other side, I would add that we also we gain our boost from appreciation of others. Like if other people in the company, the developers, appreciate our job, and not doing that, basically. It's like we feel that we are doing the right work. If somebody says, I don't want your bug, you are not correct. This is working for me. This is not a bug. I will do it my own way. Your ideas are shit or something like that. this is not a good thing.
Yeah.
But the appreciation for what we do, especially if we're not the decisive people, we're supporters. So we stand in the shadows, let's say, with the ninjas in the shadows, making the game working and the quality working. And again, what I said, working with different characters, it's hard. So sometimes we get different reactions. The better the appreciation ones, making us working better, and the morale boost is
no matter
coming
how
in.
hard it is, people, that's nature of human beings. Like we want to hear that our job was like valued, right? And
Anything
someone
you
was
do,
happy about that, right? This is a little thing. Doesn't cost too much. If you hear that from time to time, it's great. It for sure
Simple
supports.
thanks. It's thanks.
Simple things, little things, but like we shouldn't forget about them.
Yeah. Too many times when I've been to any type of like demo we were doing or hands-on, there were so many times that a QA person would just solve things on the go. It's like downloading the latest build. It's like an hour before we go on stage, and still some final checks and stuff like that. But I always see QA people as just fixers. They pretty much get stuff done. They provide you with the build. They test it. They know it's like solid, and then you just go and everything works, which is incredible. Two more questions before we wrap up, because QA probably, at least in my opinion, has all the bloopers in the world. Like you guys and gals probably collect everything. You have a million videos. Is that true or false?
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, it is.
We since I was working, we collect those in our folders, and we do that for us, obviously, to have like a archive of the things
Trust
that
me,
were
so
happening.
many players would want
Yeah.
access to that vault.
But we
But
cannot release it.
after Witcher 3, there was this
There
video,
was a blooper,
and this was the video actually created from our bloopers from our
Nice.
Jira. So it's also useful outside of our
Real
folders.
stories.
Yeah, yeah. So yes, we are collecting that. Obviously, the whole backtracker thing is like collecting all the issues, but we're collecting the most bizarre ones, the one that are unique, basically.
Do you recall the craziest bug?
Or your favorite?
Or your favorite?
My own, no, because it was so long ago that I was repairing bugs. I work more with the people than with the game, unfortunately. I mean, I love working with the people, but I don't have time to work with the game and report the bugs. But I asked my team, I usually ask them, what are the bugs that you're reporting? What do you remember? There is no one bug, because there are like categories that I will tell you. The funniest one. So like things being stretched among the whole level, like part of it, one finger being stretched among the whole level, among the whole game. Yeah, the universe. Or problems with textures where like those blue and red thing, just discotheque thing.
Or
So-
faces, just
faces.
breaking completely.
NPCs being bold, so more visual ones, they're the funniest ones. Obviously, all the animations being crooked and stuff like that.
Wonky.
Yeah, being wonky. There is nothing that I can say like this one thing was the most funniest one, because we have thousands of them. But for example, there are things, those were the visual ones, but we also use sometimes weird naming convention. For example, there was a bug when the lamp was called Pillar of Light. So it's also hard to find those issues.
Pillar of light.
Pillar of Light is
Works.
it is Pillar of Light, but it's
Creates
hard,
a pillar of light.
yeah, it's harder to find. There are also the bugs that we did for example, Cyberpunk connected to the sex scenes, because we wanted to make it realistic. So and there are different sex scenes. So there are bugs explaining what the sex scene should look like in a real version. There is like a lot of stuff about the physics of the body, for example, as well. I don't remember the bug, but I can say that I was very hardly an advocate for Takamura romance in Cyberpunk. So there is much feedback from me about it, not a bug. So yeah, this is something that I remember. And still waiting. Maybe it will happen. Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of people. There's a group of people that
I know,
is advocating
I know.
for that.
I wanted to make sure that they will get what they want before that, but sorry, guys.
Actually, my favorite, you mentioned physics. My favorite category of funny bugs is like physics. Like when we learn like there are new rules of physics in the world, right?
Destructive tests.
Yes. So levitating characters, stuff like that. It's good if you see it only during the development, right? But sometimes you see it after the development.
It's not so
not
good.
in our games.
That's so funny.
That's a funny thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
What about love for the last question? What about for people wanting to get into QA? Like, what set of skills do you need to have? Because I feel like you need to kind of cover almost everything. And could you also talk about kind of QA being the, you know, the first step that you can take, and then from there go to different departments within a company and kind of, you know, work in different parts of
I
development?
was waiting for this question.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Good.
I'm
So
glad
you can take
I'm
it.
glad you asked. No, let's answer it together. I can start. I think that there is this concept of QA being the entry level for game dev, which is true in my opinion, and which is great. But of course, we try to make sure that people stay in QA, right? If they don't stay in QA, it's also okay, because I really love to see designers, artists, or producers who are coming from QA because they already have this foundation. It's easier to work with us if they have this if they have this background.
Appreciate our
And
work,
they appreciate. They really know what it takes to be QA. And I think this is one of the misconceptions, that not everyone could be a QA. You need to have like a certain like approach to
attention to detail, investigative, like pattern recognition stuff. This is
patience,
hard.
right?
Patience.
A lot of patience.
Resilience, all those
and
proactiveness.
finding the way how to communicate and confront. Your question was about how
what skills?
What skills right?
you kind of need, yeah.
So, of course, there's this set like of standard skills like attention to details, being eager to investigate, having the analytic mindset. But I think that what else, or maybe key nowadays, is to to be able to confront and question, or maybe question and confront, because QA is about questioning things. And when you question things, you need to confront yourself with other people, and it's always difficult for everyone. No matter what you do, no matter if you are QA or producer or whatever, you need to say that, no, I think it's different because facts, right?
Yeah.
So be able to get prepared with the facts, and facts can support also your subjective opinion later on, right? So start with that. And I think that it also touches something that I love to say to the people I work with. This is the attitude, right? The attitude is the multiplier of all the skills and knowledge you have. If you have the right mindset, and you are just easy to work with, so you are easy to communicate with, that's great. This attitude is also being proactive, being like confident,
responsible
right? Responsible, but also
accountable.
Accountable, committed. We agree on something, we commit to do, we do it, no matter what. Sometimes it's difficult, right? And this attitude touches very much our values, in my opinion. If you have, to some extent, portion of you is like our values, then, and maybe we can remind them our values at this point, right? So be ambitious, of course. Set the goal and persevere. I feel like in school.
Yeah, be honest.
Be honest.
We need to be honest, because we work on the data.
Right?
Yeah.
Be kind and respectful to all around you.
And the gamers thing.
Yeah, always
remember about
always
gamers.
remember about the gamers,
because QA should be a gamer. So people working in QA should be playing games and a different genre of games, not only focusing on one. We need to compare. We need to be able.
If you're able to support this and show it in your like everyday action, come to us, right?
Because you can learn you can learn all the engine stuff. You can learn all the debugging, testing, different kind of tests, but you cannot learn soft skills. You have those soft skills in you.
And I think that nowadays, especially when we are in the environment of we as our company works on multiple projects, and we grow in scale. QA will also grow in scale. But what's really important is to be flexible and adaptive, and everyone has to be open for learning new stuff, switching gears. Like, for example, now in Project X, you work as a QA on this and that, but be ready that within the new project, which is like a different project, different requirements, you will have to do a slightly different job, right? So be ready for that. Flexibility, I think, is
ready for change.
Yeah.
Awesome. This was perfect.
Great. We know everything now.
Yeah. Well, I feel like
we could
go
be
on
talking for hours. Yes, exactly.
Easily.
The base.
Yes.
If people want, we can do it again.
Yeah, totally.
With other additional questions.
So yeah, Monika, Piotr, thank you.
Thank you very
This
much.
was really
Thank
amazing.
you for inviting us, because there's not a lot of QA talks and discussions online.
Hopefully now there will be
in
more,
general.
because it's a super interesting topic, and like I said, real heroes in the game dev space.
QA is a real hero.
That's true.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Today we cleared up a lot of misconceptions about the quality assurance team and understood better how this team works from the inside.
It was an incredible talk, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And as always, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, all that jazz. Let us know what you're thinking about the episodes, and we'll see you, of course, in the next one. Bye.